It's a pleasure to have you. Obviously, lots going on, lots of volatility. Big picture, Ben, where are we right now?
Yeah, so I think we're in a fairly obvious place from looking at prior cycles and bear markets for Bitcoin, and namely that area is upon Bitcoin's first lower low. If you remember the last time I came on here to Real Vision, we spoke a lot about Bitcoin and the Bitcoin dominance, right? And the reason we spoke about that was because we saw that Bitcoin was putting in higher lows, technically speaking, right? We also know, though, in a bear market, higher lows are typically not held, and eventually we are destined to put in a lower low. And we talked about how once Bitcoin puts in a lower low, the Bitcoin dominance is likely going to go up. So when we talked about it back then, the Bitcoin dominance was around 42%. Now it's almost 45%. So a lot has happened since then. And the reason why
Yeah.
it's gone up is again because Bitcoin put in a lower low. And when you think about why that would have an effect on the Bitcoin dominance, well, the reason is because once a lower low is set, there are a lot of bulls who no longer can claim that it looks bullish if in fact a lower low has been put in.
Hey, Ben, just for a bit of an overview, we're filming here on Monday, May 23rd, 2022. Give us a little bit of an overview for people who aren't following the price action as closely as you are on what's happened on price since you've last been with us.
Yeah, so I think the last time I came on, it was sometime in April, I believe, and Bitcoin was sort of just putting in higher lows. January it was around 33K, February 34K, and then in May of 2022 it was around 37 or 38K. And I came on onto Real Vision Crypto sometime before the lower low was set. And the
Right.
reason we specifically spoke about this was because the exact same pattern played out in 2018. And namely that pattern is higher lows followed by a rejection off the 200-day moving average. The failure to put in a higher low followed by a bottom, a local bottom. And we saw the exact same thing play out, right? We had a low, a higher low at about $1,000 higher, a failure to put in a higher low after the rejection off the 200-day, and then what came after it was a new lower low, which was lower than any of the prices that preceded it in this say bull market. Like the last time we were at 25K was all the way back in December of 2020. So this is in fact our first lower low. And the reason why this is important, and I really want to hone in on this, because I think it's extremely important for people to understand how the altcoin market works with respect to Bitcoin. Is in 2018, you can see that once Bitcoin put in a lower low, you can see that it was in June of 2018, right? June 2018. But also in June of 2018, if we flip over to the Bitcoin dominance, and remember, the Bitcoin dominance is just the market cap of Bitcoin divided by the market cap of the entire asset class. Okay, so it shows you how dominant Bitcoin is compared to everything else. In June of 2018, the Bitcoin dominance was at 42%, which is exactly where we were just a few days ago, or a week ago or so, right? And when we came on to Real Vision Crypto a month or two ago, we were around 42%. And what we said was, look, upon the first lower low by Bitcoin, you will see a breakout in the Bitcoin dominance. Okay. Now we have that breakout in the Bitcoin dominance, and it's gone to approximately 45%. At the time of this recording, as I make the video right now, the dominance is at 44.83%. But I think the last time we did the video a month or two ago, it was at 42%. Now, if you look to see what followed that for Bitcoin in 2018, you will see that the dominance fairly quickly over the next 3 or 4 months went all the way up to over 60%, like over 60% in a relatively swift fashion, right? Like we didn't really stop. It was just more or less month over month, the Bitcoin dominance continued to climb. Now, the reason why this is extremely interesting to me is normally when you expect dominance to be making moves, you might assume that Bitcoin's doing something, right? Like it's either going up or it's going down. But the reason why this was interesting is because Bitcoin in 2018, after the first lower low was set in June, we just went sideways until November. But it was during that sideways action that the Bitcoin dominance went up so much. And the
Hmm.
reason the Bitcoin dominance went up was because all of the altcoins slowly bled against Bitcoin and against their USD valuations. Okay. Now, in the short term, what we noticed with Bitcoin is that there were some short-term pumps, right? I mean, Bitcoin still had to move back up. I would, if we get this move back up, like we did in 2018, then I would expect Bitcoin to potentially reach going back up to the high 30s or maybe even around $40,000 if we get that similar move after the lower low is put in. Okay. So if that happens, you should expect alt valuations against the US dollar to go up, but I would still expect alt Bitcoin valuations to bleed for many months to come because Bitcoin is put in a lower low. Therefore, confidence in the altcoin market has mostly been shattered at this point, and it will not return until Bitcoin is starting to look a bit more confident in itself. So, when thinking about this, we've shown that Bitcoin remained choppy for months to come after the lower low was in, for months. But the Bitcoin dominance went up to over 60%. So, what was going down, right? What was going down during that time? Well, first, you can look at the main second crypto, Ethereum. And to just start off with, if you look at the Ethereum USD valuation, what you'll notice is that in 2018, when Bitcoin was going sideways, Ethereum was going down, right? It was
Right.
actually going down quite a lot right here. And therefore, Ethereum's valuation of Bitcoin was also going down. Look at this. This is what I think it's a really
Right.
important thing to show. Bitcoin put in a lower low in June of 2018. The Ethereum Bitcoin valuation was slowly bleeding. And then a month after Bitcoin had put in a lower low, that's when the Ethereum valuation against Bitcoin sort of fell off a cliff, right? It
Right.
kind of fell off a cliff. Now, I'm an Ethereum bull, right? I love Ethereum. I think it is by far the best layer one out there. And I don't think anything else comes even close to it. But I also recognize that it's very seasonal against Bitcoin. And you will notice that the Ethereum Bitcoin valuation is in a very precarious position right now because, in the same way that we talked about Bitcoin USD putting in a lower low, and that ended up coming to fruition, right? And because it's a bear market and then the Bitcoin dominance went higher, I think the Ethereum Bitcoin valuation, it's also been putting in higher lows for a while. But because we're in a bear market, I think that this will also eventually fall. And if that falls, the reason it might fall is not even necessarily that Bitcoin's price is going down. It could just be that Bitcoin's staying range bound for a few months and people decide to go back to either cash or back to Bitcoin until the market looks healthy. So again, I'm an Ether bull,
Right.
but another way to look at this too with regards to Ethereum is look at every summer going into the end of the year. Okay. If you look at 2015, the Ethereum Bitcoin valuation bled from the summer until the end of the year. If you look at 2016, again, from the middle of the year until December, it bled. If you look at 2017, the Ethereum Bitcoin valuation bled during the second half of the year. If you look in 2018, it bled during the second half of the year. The same thing in 2019, it bled during the second half of the year. And then again in 2020, really since about August. So it started a little bit later. Right? It started a little bit later, but it bled going into the end of the year. Last year is the first time that it did not really bleed that much going into the end of the year. So I would say that last year was an exception to the rule. So I mean, it's not always going to play out, of course. Last year was an exception. And I look at this chart and I think that it's more likely that it'll eventually break to the downside. And then what'll likely happen, I think, is we have the merge coming up for Ethereum in August theoretically, but it could be pushed when they transition from proof of work to proof of stake. But I
Hey,
think the
Ben, why
main
don't you explain just really quickly the significance of the merge and what exactly is going to be happening in August?
Yeah, I mean, so if you're familiar with blockchains in general, or for with Bitcoin, you might have heard of proof of work. Okay, and proof of work is where this whole conversation related to how much energy is it taking, right? Like this is a lot of politicians talk about that, and the how computationally expensive it is to secure a proof of work network like Bitcoin. Okay, now I do think proof of work is great, but Ethereum is looking to transition to proof of stake, okay, rather than securing it through complex mathematical problems like with
Right.
Bitcoin, and this has obviously led to the rising cost of GPUs. It's actually going towards proof of stake, where you have delegators like us. We might want to help secure the network, so we stake our crypto, um, and rather than securing it through proof of work, it's through proof of stake. Now, one common misconception is not going to solve the gas fees. Okay, so this is not necessarily going to make the gas fees go down. A bear market can make the gas fees go down, but we want to be clear about what it actually is and what it's not.
Yeah.
And when you think about this transition, right? The thing that has me somewhat worried with the transition from being a proof of work network to proof of stake is that it introduces uncertainty during a bear market. Okay.
Mhm.
Now, a lot of us would say proof of stake, that's great, right? Like proof of stake is a really good thing. And, this is ultimately what Ethereum was designed to be. It's just been taking years and years for us to get to that point. So this would be a good thing. Theoretically, it would lead to higher prices. But I think if you think of it within the context of a Bitcoin bear market, if you think about it within the context of uncertainty with regards to regulations, and if you think about it with regards to uncertainty with what happens if there's hiccups during the transition, I think it's not necessarily going to lead to the best price action in the short term for
Yeah.
Ether against Bitcoin. Okay,
Yeah.
against Bitcoin. So what I mean by that is my thinking on Ethereum is that it's likely going to bleed against Bitcoin going into the end of the year, and after it's made that transition to proof of stake, after we have more regulatory clarity about what is okay and what is not okay, after we have more regulatory clarity over things like decentralized finance, and once we're just watching Ethereum sort of chug along as a proof of stake network, and it's working, and there's no more bugs that are constantly worried about, then by that point, I think the Ethereum valuation will be strong against Bitcoin again. And normally you'll see the Ethereum valuation against Bitcoin start to go higher by December, or if not December, usually in Q1 of the following year. So you can see the downtrends, but look at the uptrends. They tend to occur in January, right? This is January. This here, it started again in January. And so in 2016, it started in January. In 2017, it started in January. In 2018, the move started in December. In 2019, you can see that it started in December. It was a smaller pump, but again, it was also during a Bitcoin bear market. And then again in 2020, you can see there was a move by the Ether Bitcoin valuation in January, and then again in 2021. Right. So all of the nice moves of Ethereum against Bitcoin tend to start either December or in Q1. But we know that in the summer, and we know that in Q4, at least up until December, the Ethereum Bitcoin valuation does tend to bleed, with the exception of last year.
One final point we should add around the August date, this merge that we're talking about, formerly called ETH 2.0, this is the big shift that people have been anticipating in the space now for some time, as you say, from proof of work to proof of stake.
Yeah, and I've been anticipating it forever, and I still can't believe we're in
Yeah.
2022 and it hasn't actually happened yet. So that's why I do want people to remember that the timelines can always be pushed back. So it's
Yeah.
August right now, but come August they could always push it back. It's happened before; it could happen again. So leave some grace for deadlines to be changed if or timelines to be changed if in fact that happens. But yeah, I mean, I think that that's more or less where we are, and yeah, ultimately, I think that the Ethereum valuation against Bitcoin is going to be under some heavy pressure for the next few months.
Hey there, revolutionaries. Thanks for tuning in. For more content like this, head over to realvision.com/crypto and get unfiltered access to the most brilliant minds in finance and crypto. Join our community of lifelong learners for exclusive access, unparalleled education, and unbiased insights.